In the high halls of global power, where decisions shape the fate of nations, a storm is quietly gathering, one that threatens to shake the foundations of diplomacy and test the strength of African sovereignty. At the center of this tempest stands the President of the United States, Donald Trump, a man whose words carry the weight of the world, and whose latest accusation has sent ripples far beyond the borders of his own country. He has leveled a claim so severe, so incendiary, that it ignited fiery debates from Washington to Johannesburg. South Africa, a nation still healing from the wounds of its past, is suddenly accused of white genocide, an allegation that pits neighbor against neighbor, history against truth, and casts a long shadow over the continent. But in Africa, where resilience is forged through centuries of struggle, such accusations do not go unanswered. From the bustling streets of Johannesburg to the rugged landscapes of Burkina Faso, leaders rise to speak, not with fear, but with fierce determination. One voice in particular stands out: Julius Malema, the unyielding and passionate leader of South Africa's economic freedom fighters, known for his boldness and his refusal to be silenced. And far to the west, in the heart of Burkina Faso, another lion awakens: Ibrahim Traoré, a young and charismatic leader, whose courage and vision have earned him respect across Africa and beyond. These two lions, from opposite ends of the continent, find themselves united by a common cause: to stand firm against a narrative that seeks to divide, to diminish, and to control. Together, they will roar. Together, they will challenge the forces that threaten their land, their people, and their dignity. This is not just a political clash. It is a battle for the soul of a continent. Welcome to When Lions Roar. It began in the heart of Washington, D.C., the world's epicenter of power and influence. Within the storied walls of the White House, where decisions ripple across continents, a meeting was underway that would soon ignite a global firestorm. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, sat resolutely at the head of the Oval Office's grand table. Around him, trusted advisors and key officials leaned forward with a mix of anticipation and urgency. The air was heavy with the weight of what was to come. On a large screen behind him, a carefully crafted video montage began to play, one that would shatter diplomatic norms and fracture international relations. The images flashed rapidly: grainy footage of isolated attacks on South African farms, angry crowds chanting in townships, and a brief but intense clip of Julius Malema, the impassioned and controversial leader of South Africa's economic freedom fighters. The narration that followed was sharp and alarming: Donald Trump's own voice declaring that a white genocide was underway in South Africa. The claim was shocking, incendiary, and unlike anything the world had seen from the American president before. "There is a real crisis," the video said. "White farmers are being hunted and killed. The South African government turns a blind eye. This is a genocide." But beneath the bold claims and dramatic footage lay a tangled web of truth, half-truths, and outright distortions. Some of the images were taken from unrelated conflicts. Others were carefully selected to provoke fear and outrage. The video wasn't just a presentation. It was a weapon. A calculated move to frame South Africa as a nation spiraling into chaos, and to pressure world leaders to act. Across newsrooms in New York, London, Johannesburg, and beyond, the claims ignited fevered debates. Social media exploded with hashtags and heated arguments. Opinion pieces flooded the airwaves. To many, the accusations seemed reckless, fueled by misinformation and racial fear. To others, they appeared as a call to attention to a real and urgent crisis. But for South Africans, especially those living in vulnerable communities, the accusations felt deeply personal. The wounds of apartheid, land dispossession, and racial violence are still raw. The country is still wrestling with how to heal and build a future that belongs to all its people. Amid this swirling storm, one voice rose above the noise: clear, fierce, unyielding. Julius Malema. Malema's fiery speeches have long stirred controversy. His rhetoric on land reform, economic freedom, and justice resonates powerfully with millions who have felt sidelined for decades. But now, faced with Trump's sweeping accusations, Malema's voice grew louder, his defiance sharper. "We reject these lies," he thundered in rallies packed with supporters. We will not be intimidated by foreign powers trying to rewrite our story. His words echoed through cities, towns, and villages, carried on the wind like a battle cry. But Malema's politics are not simple. His radical demands for land redistribution and economic empowerment provoke as much fear as hope. To many in South Africa, he is a champion of justice. To others, a figure of division. Yet, the real story beneath the headlines is one of a country caught between its painful history and an uncertain future. Poverty and inequality still plague millions. The scars of racial division run deep. And the question of who owns the land remains one of the most explosive issues in the nation's political landscape. As Malema took the stage against Trump's accusations, his voice carried more than just political rhetoric, it carried the weight of a nation's soul. However, the reverberations of this confrontation were not contained within South Africa's borders. Globally, the reaction was swift and varied. Some world leaders condemned the White House's claims outright, calling them reckless and harmful. Others, concerned about their own geopolitical interests, remained cautious, carefully measuring their words. In the halls of power from Brussels to Beijing, from Nairobi to New Delhi, conversations were happening behind closed doors. Diplomats debated the implications of this new crisis. Was this merely political posturing, or the start of something larger? Could these accusations destabilize a region already grappling with complex challenges? Would this widen existing divides, both within South Africa and across the continent? The uncertainty was palpable. Meanwhile, the media frenzy escalated. Sensational headlines, polarizing opinion pieces, and social media storms all fed the fire. For ordinary people watching from afar, the world seemed on edge. And within this tense atmosphere, the spark had been lit. A spark that would soon ignite a fire far beyond what anyone could have imagined. As the storm of accusations brewed in the south, far to the west, another force was stirring, one that would add a new roar to the growing chorus of resistance. In the heart of West Africa lies Burkina Faso, a nation with a proud history of resilience and revolution. Here, a young leader named Ibrahim Traoré was rising, someone who carried the hopes of a new generation. Traoré was no stranger to struggle. From his earliest days, he witnessed the shadows cast by neo-colonial powers, economic puppetry, foreign meddling, and policies that stifled true independence. But he refused to be bound by the past. With a sharp mind and a steady hand, Traoré emerged as a beacon of change. At a time when many feared to speak, he chose to roar. His charisma and courage quickly earned him respect both at home and across the continent. Unlike many seasoned politicians, his voice carried the raw urgency of someone determined to reclaim Africa's dignity. Burkina Faso's youth looked to him as a symbol of hope, a leader who would stand unflinchingly against outside interference. And when news of the accusations against South Africa reached him, when the world watched Trump's aggressive claims, Traoré did not hesitate. He took to the airwaves, addressing his people and the world with a speech that echoed through capitals and communities alike. Africa's leaders must stand united, he declared with fierce resolve. We reject any attempts to divide us with lies and intimidation. His words were more than rhetoric. They were a call to arms, a challenge to those who believed they could control Africa's destiny from afar. Behind the scenes, however, the battle was just beginning. Encrypted calls crackled across continents. Secret meetings were held in undisclosed locations. Julius Malema and Ibrahim Traoré, two lions from opposite ends of Africa, connected, sharing not just words but a vision. Together, they forged an alliance, the Lions of Africa, a bold pact to reclaim their narrative and push back against foreign interference. In whispered strategy sessions, they planned speeches, diplomatic moves, and media campaigns. Their alliance symbolized more than politics. It embodied the spirit of a continent refusing to be silenced. This was no longer just a regional dispute, it was a battle for Africa's soul, fought on a global stage. And with these two lions leading the charge, the roar of resistance was growing louder by the day. As the alliance of lions grew stronger, so too did the battle raging beyond headlines and speeches, a battle for the truth itself. In Washington, the Trump administration doubled down. The accusations against South Africa were no longer whispered in closed rooms. They became a full-scale media offensive. Television channels, social media platforms, and online news outlets echoed the narrative of white genocide, each story louder, more urgent, more alarming. Behind the scenes, teams worked tirelessly to amplify the message, crafting hashtags, sharing video clips, and targeting global audiences. But across the oceans, Julius Malema and Ibrahim Traoré refused to be drowned out. With every falsehood, they struck back. Strategic speeches were crafted with precision, combining passion with facts. Malema's fiery addresses rallied his people and inspired allies. Traoré's measured statements appealed to diplomats and citizens alike. Together, they launched coordinated social media campaigns, sharing stories of resilience, unity, and the real challenges faced by their nations. Their message was clear. Africa would not be defined by lies. Slowly but surely, public opinion began to shift. Voices that had been silenced by fear found courage. Stories of hope and resistance flooded timelines and news feeds. But this battle was not fought in the airwaves alone. On the streets, the heartbeat of Africa pulsed fiercely. In the townships of Johannesburg, a young mother carried her child, her eyes filled with both worry and determination. She spoke of the struggles to find work, to keep her family safe, and of the pride she felt in her country's spirit. In the dusty markets of Ouagadougou, a street vendor paused his daily routine to listen to Malema's speech on his radio. He nodded, knowing the truth was far more complicated than the headlines. Across cities and villages, people shared stories of pain, of injustice, but also of hope and unbreakable pride. These voices, raw and real, became the undercurrent of a growing movement. And while the world watched the media war, the real battle unfolded in the halls of power. Within the African Union's chambers, Malema and Traoré worked tirelessly, pushing for unity and a collective response. They engaged in diplomatic talks, forging alliances with other African leaders. At the United Nations, their voices echoed through corridors, demanding respect and recognition for their sovereignty. But the opposition was formidable. Western powers, wary of losing influence, pushed back with equal force. Behind closed doors, political chess games played out. Deals were made, threats exchanged, and the stakes rose ever higher. The tension was palpable. The world teetered on the edge of a new era, one defined by who could control the narrative. As the lions prepared for the ultimate showdown, their roar grew louder, echoing through the hearts and minds of millions. As the battle for Africa's narrative reached its climax, a historic moment unfolded, one that would resonate far beyond the continent's borders. Under the leadership of Julius Malema and Ibrahim Traoré, a virtual summit was convened, uniting African leaders from every region, every nation, and every walk of life. From the bustling capitals of Lagos and Nairobi to the quiet villages nestled in the Sahara's edge, voices came together in solidarity. In this unprecedented gathering, the lions stood side by side, their words carrying the weight of history and the hope of the future. Malema's speech was fiery and unyielding. He spoke of pride, sovereignty, and the unbreakable spirit of Africa's people. Traoré's address echoed with the clarity of purpose and the call for unity. He reminded the world that Africa's story must be told by Africans themselves, not by outsiders with hidden agendas. Their words quickly went viral, igniting a movement that spread like wildfire. Across social media and news outlets, millions joined the call. Africa united, they declared. But the fight was not yet over. In Washington, President Trump launched his final salvo, an aggressive media blitz attempting to reclaim the narrative. Television screens flickered with fierce rhetoric, and social media channels exploded with coordinated campaigns. Yet, the lions of Africa were prepared. Armed with irrefutable evidence, testimonies, and international support, Malema and Traoré struck back decisively. The tide began to turn. Diplomatic alliances strengthened. International organizations voiced support. The global community watched as Africa reclaimed its dignity and narrative. And when the dust settled, a legacy was born. A continent awakened. Leaders emboldened. A world reminded, Africa's story belongs to Africa. The roar of Malema and Traoré echoed beyond borders, inspiring generations to come. Their fight was more than politics. It was a testament to courage, unity, and the relentless pursuit of truth. And as the lions roared, the world listened. This is their story. This is the roar heard around the world. When lions roar, the very earth trembles beneath their feet. Julius Malema and Ibrahim Traoré, two leaders from opposite ends of Africa, united by a shared vision, a shared courage, and an unbreakable commitment to their people. Their alliance was more than a political strategy. It was a symbol, a beacon of hope for a continent too often spoken for, too often misunderstood. They stood tall in the face of overwhelming forces. They challenged the narratives imposed by others and reclaimed the dignity that rightfully belongs to their nations. Their fight reminds us all that courage can come from the most unexpected places, that unity can overcome even the deepest divisions, and that the roar of the oppressed can shake the pillars of power. But this story, like the continent itself, is still being written. The road ahead is long, filled with challenges yet also bursting with promise. As these lions continue to roar, their echoes will inspire generations to rise, to speak, and to fight for justice. Thank you for joining us on this journey, a journey through power, pride, and politics. This is just the beginning. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Ibrahim Traoré Parables, where the voices of Africa's leaders come alive. Because when lions roar, the world listens.